That old man is clearly trying to steal that purse. The blonde woman's voice cut through the noise of downtown Denver like a siren. She pointed with a trembling hand at a 67-year-old black man walking calmly down the sidewalk, a small brown leather purse in his hands. "Officer Turner, I saw him pick it up off the ground and try to run away." Traffic roared, horns honked, people rushed by on their lunch breaks. But in that moment, the city seemed to narrow to one scene. An elderly black man, a frightened white woman, and two uniformed officers already moving in. Officer Turner's hand went straight to his baton. "Hands up, Grandpa. Slow! Down," he barked, already walking fast toward the man. "Drop that bag, now." Robert Williams stopped where he was. His back was a little hunched, his hair gray at the temples, his clothes simple and worn work pants, old jacket, practical shoes. He raised his hands slowly, the purse dangling in one of them. His eyes didn't show panic. They showed something else, a tired, unshakable calm. "Officer," he said in a steady voice, "I found this purse right outside the bank. I was looking inside for an ID to return it. There are documents with a name and address." Officer Davidson stepped up beside Turner, took one look at Robert, and laughed under his breath. "Yeah, sure, like every thief says," Davidson muttered. "Turner, cuff this guy. Just look at him. Old clothes, suspicious, lurking by the bank. Typical." Turner grabbed Robert's wrist and twisted it behind his back, much rougher than necessary. The old man winced but didn't resist. A small circle formed nearby. Office workers, tourists, a couple of teenagers already holding up their phones to record. People whispering, some disapproving, some indifferent. Turner snapped the cuffs on tighter than he had to. "Got yourself a long record, Grandpa?" he said loudly, making sure the crowd could hear. "I bet you do. We'll see everything when we run your name." "Officer, my name is Robert William," he replied quietly. "I live at 847 Maple. I'm 67. I've never been arrested in my life." "We're not interested in story time," Davidson said, rolling his eyes. "You can save your speech for the station." He gave Robert a shove toward the patrol car. What the two officers didn't know was that this moment, this careless, arrogant moment, would be replayed across the country. That every word, every shove, every insult would come back like a boomerang. And that the man they were humiliating was not as alone as they thought. Before we go deeper into how this simple act of kindness turned into a national lesson on justice and respect, take a second to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment with where you're watching from. Stories like this deserve to be heard because they remind us what real dignity looks like when everything is stacked against you. Turner marched Robert to the squad car and pushed his head down a bit too hard as he put him inside. Robert looked out through the smeared patrol car window as the city slid past. He watched people on the sidewalks, watched the bank entrance get smaller in the mirror, watched the blonde woman still talking excitedly to another officer. He didn't complain. He didn't raise his voice. He just watched. Inside, he was doing something else. He noted the numbers painted on the patrol car door. He read the badge names again. Turner, Davidson. He quietly looked up at the small security camera mounted on a lamppost near the bank entrance. Another on the corner of the building. Another above the bank doors. He had lived long enough to know that sometimes the truth needed witnesses that didn't blink. "My son will worry if I don't get home on time," Robert said calmly from the back seat as they pulled into traffic. Davidson glanced at him in the mirror and snorted. "Your son, let me guess. He's a bum just like you." Turner laughed. "Or maybe he learned the family business early and steals bigger purses." They both laughed. Robert fell silent. He had heard worse before in his life. As a janitor, as a black man in America, as a kid in a neighborhood where police cars only came with sirens blaring. But one thing made this moment different. This time the wrong people were underestimating him, and they were underestimating his son even more. At Denver Central, Turner led Robert down the gray hallway, pushed him into a small interrogation room, and sat him down in a metal chair. The air smelled like stale coffee and cheap disinfectant. A camera in the corner blinked red. "Sit there and be quiet, Grandpa," Davidson said, pulling the chair roughly closer to the table. "We're going to run your background and find out what else you've taken that no one caught you for." Robert sat. His hands were still cuffed behind his back. His shoulders ached. He took a slow breath. "Officer," he said respectfully, "may I make a phone call? My son is going to worry if I don't." Turner laughed loudly and turned to Davidson. "Did you hear that? His son is going to worry. Probably another old guy sitting on a couch watching TV, living off government checks. Or maybe an imaginary son, Davidson added, smirking. They love making up families when they're in trouble. Makes them sound more human. They both laughed again. While they laughed, Robert watched them closely. He watched which key Turner used to lock the door. He watched where Davidson placed his cell phone. He watched where they dropped Robert's own phone on the table, assuming he hadn't noticed. The screen was still lit. The microphone still active. The device still recording. Robert Williams, Turner muttered, typing. No criminal record, huh? First time then. Just means he finally got caught. Davidson walked over and planted his hands on the table, leaning down so his face was only inches from Robert's. Look here, old man, he said, enunciating each word like he was talking to a child. We know you were trying to steal that purse. The lady saw you. She told us everything. So drop the innocent act. It's not working. I found the purse on the ground, Robert repeated calmly. I opened it to find the owner. I was walking toward the bank entrance when you stopped me. You can check the security cameras. They'll show exactly what happened. Turner and Davidson exchanged a quick look. For a second, both of them knew the old man was right. Those cameras could show the truth. For a second, their arrogance wavered. Then pride took over. The cameras don't interest us, Turner lied. We've got an eyewitness. That's enough. And you're staying right here, Davidson added, folding his arms, until you stop wasting our time and admit what you did. Old guys like you cause nothing but problems. Wandering around, making decent people nervous. Robert looked at them for a long moment. Then he asked a question he already knew would cut deeper than they expected. Officers, do you have parents? He asked quietly. Turner frowned. What does that have to do with anything? I just wonder, Robert said, his voice as steady as ever, if you would like your mother or father to be treated the way you're treating me. Handcuffed, shoved, insulted, without anyone even checking the facts. Davidson scoffed. My parents don't walk around stealing purses, he said. They have class. Robert held his gaze. My son always told me something, he said softly. He told me a man's character is revealed not when he deals with his equals, but when he has power over someone who cannot fight back. That made something flicker in Davidson's eyes. Annoyance, discomfort, maybe a flicker of recognition. Turner saw that and decided he needed to reassert control. Your son, Turner said, circling Robert's chair. Let me take a wild guess. One of those washed-up vets living off government checks? Or maybe working mall security, thinking he's important. Robert closed his eyes for a second, not in surrender, but to steady the anger rising under his calm. When he opened them again, his gaze had changed. There was still gentleness there, but also steel. My son, Robert said, served 3 tours in Afghanistan, 2 in Iraq. He commands a naval special operations unit now. He taught me the difference between people who use authority to protect and people who use it to humiliate. Turner burst out laughing. Navy what? He snorted. Special operations? Is that what he told you, Grandpa? He probably clears tables on some ship cafeteria. Davidson joined in, shaking his head. Yeah, sure, your son is Rambo, and I'm the president. At that exact moment, Robert's cell phone vibrated softly on the table between them. Turner, without asking, grabbed it. Look at this, Davidson, he said, unlocking it easily. Message from James. Let's see what kind of son we're dealing with. Robert watched him calmly. He had left the phone without a lock on purpose. Turner read the message on the screen aloud. Dad, I'm worried. You should have been home 2 hours ago. I'm tracking your phone and I see you're at Central Station. If you don't answer in 10 minutes, I'm mobilizing my team. Davidson's smile faded a little. Mobilizing a team, he muttered. What is he? The Avengers. Turner forced a laugh. Yeah, right. Old man's son plays too many video games. They started scrolling through the photos without asking. Image after image. Robert with a younger black man in uniform. Medals pinned to his chest. Navy insignia clearly visible. Barrette, trident. Patches neither of them needed a manual to understand. Okay, this is edited, Turner said, but his voice had lost some of its bite. Anyone can fake photos. Robert let a small, quiet smile appear. Officer Turner, he asked gently, what do you think happens when a Navy SEAL commander learns his 67-year Old father has been arrested, handcuffed, insulted, and denied respect. For trying to return a purse? The silence in the room suddenly felt heavier. They could hear the humming of the old air conditioner, the faint noise of phones ringing somewhere down the hall, their own breathing. Meanwhile, 2 floors above, Captain Morrison sat in his office replaying bank footage on his monitor. Again and again. He watched Robert walk up to the purse, look around, bend slowly to pick it up. He watched him open it. He watched him glance toward the bank doors, then turn in that direction. He watched Turner and Davidson swoop in, grab him, twist his hands, cuff him. This makes no sense, Morrison muttered. He was clearly taking it in. He wasn't running away with it. Then his desk phone rang. Captain Morrison, he answered, distracted. Captain, a calm, controlled voice said on the other end. This is Commander James Williams, United States Navy. I need to speak with you about my father. I believe he is currently detained at your station. Morrison froze. That voice had a weight he recognized instantly. Not bluff, not drama. Military command. Keep Commander William, Morrison stammered, straightening in his chair. Let me check. He typed quickly, Robert Williams, arrest record. It popped up immediately. Suspected purse snatching. Eyewitness. Resisting. Morrison glanced at the footage again. His stomach sank. My father is 67 years old, James continued. He has early-stage Alzheimer's. He is 2 hours late returning from a doctor's appointment. The GPS on his phone shows your station. I need to know what has been done to him in the last 2 hours. Morrison swallowed hard. Commander, I see he was detained on suspicion of. He stopped mid-sentence as the gap between the report and the video burned his eyes. On suspicion of. Suspicion of what, Captain? James's voice was still calm, but like a calm ocean before a storm. Dad, I see your phone hasn't moved. ETA 15 minutes. My team is with me. Stand by. This time Turner didn't read it aloud. His eyes skimmed the words. His throat went dry. Officer, Robert said softly, watching him. You now have less than 15 minutes to decide how you want to explain what you've done. To my son, to your captain, and to anyone else who hears the recording from that phone. Recording? Davidson blurted. Robert nodded toward the device. It's been recording audio since you picked it up at the sidewalk, he said quietly. Every word, every grandpa, every bum. My late commander used to say, if you're proud of how you're treating someone, you won't mind if the whole world hears it. Before they could respond, the intercom on the wall buzzed sharply. Turner, Davidson, both of you, my office. Now, Captain Morrison's voice snapped through. They exchanged a worried look. Turner slammed the phone down, trying to regain his authority. Don't go anywhere, he said to Robert with fake confidence. We'll be right back to finish this. Robert smiled faintly. I'll be right here, officers, he replied. I've got nowhere to run, remember? They left. The room door clicked shut. Robert sat alone. He rolled his shoulders, easing the stiffness from the cuffs. The camera in the corner watched in silence. He looked up at it and spoke softly. My son says justice walks slowly, he murmured, but she never forgets her destination. 12 minutes later, the sound of 3 powerful engines roared outside the station. Turner and Davidson, who had just left Morrison's office pale and sweating, stopped in the hallway and looked toward the front windows. 3 unmarked dark vehicles slid to a stop in front of the building with perfect coordination. Doors opened. Men stepped out. Not movie soldiers. Real ones. He turned. His eyes landed on Turner. Then Davidson. He read their badges. Officer Turner, he said slowly. Officer Davidson. Explain to me exactly why my father was arrested, handcuffed, and humiliated in your custody. Turner tried to gather himself. Commander, sir, your father was caught trying to steal a purse. We have an eyewitness. We followed protocol. That, James cut in, his voice suddenly razor sharp, is a lie. He stepped closer to the table. Captain Morrison showed me the bank cameras. My father picked up a purse lying on the ground and walked toward the entrance to return it. He raised his hands peacefully the second you approached. He never ran. He never resisted. He did what decent people do. Davidson opened his mouth. Commander, maybe we misread the situation, but Protocol, James said, taking one slow step toward him, does not include mocking a man's age, implying he's a criminal because of how he looks, or calling his son a bum. He picked up the phone, turned the volume up, and pressed play. From the small speaker came Davidson's own voice. Your son, let me guess, he's a bum like his father. Followed by Turner's laughter, silence pressed in on the room. James let the recording play longer. People like you are always trouble. My parents have class. He must be a janitor at a base. Grandpa. Every insult echoed back at them, now with witnesses. Morrison stood in the doorway, his face stony. Other officers had gathered behind him. Commander, Turner began, desperation creeping in. Maybe we can resolve this internally. We can talk, explain. It doesn't have to go. Resolve it internally, James said with a bitter half-laugh. You publicly humiliated a war veteran. You denied him basic respect. You didn't check cameras. You didn't verify his story. You assumed black, old, poor equals criminal. And you think you'll fix that quietly? He looked at Morrison. Effective immediately, he said. Turner, Davidson, turn in your badges and guns to Sergeant Cole. You're on suspension, pending investigation. Commander, please. Davidson's voice cracked. If this goes public, our careers. Your careers? James repeated slowly. My father gave 30 years of his life to this country. 3 tours in Vietnam. You know what that means. 12 months in hell. Then another. Then another. He trained men who now lead entire units. He worked nights cleaning buildings so I could go to school. And you? You gave him handcuffs and insults. Robert stood up slowly. Son, he said softly, touching his arm. They are still young. Maybe they can learn. James looked at his father, and his expression softened for a moment. Dad, he said, you always see the best in people. Somebody has to, Robert replied gently. Otherwise the world never changes. James nodded once. Then he turned back to the officers. Here's what's going to happen, he said. In 24 hours, this story will be on every local news channel. The recordings, the footage, the photos of the marks on my father's wrists, everything. Not because I want revenge, but because if this stays hidden, it will happen again. To someone who doesn't have a son like me. He laid the phone back on the table. On the screen, the last message still showed. ETA, 15 minutes. Stand by. He reached for the handcuffs. Gently, carefully, he unlocked them from his father's wrists. Robert flexed his hands, feeling the blood return. He didn't look at Turner or Davidson with anger. Just disappointment. Then father and son walked out together. The elite team followed behind them. The door of the interrogation room closed, leaving Turner and Davidson staring at the table, listening to their own words still echoing faintly from the phone. 2 careers didn't end because of a single mistake. They ended because that mistake had revealed who they really were when no one important. Their movements were sharp, disciplined, efficient. Their uniforms carried no big showy decorations, just practical gear, and small patches that meant everything to people who understood. My God, Davidson whispered, throat tight. They're actually SEALs. Turner didn't answer. He couldn't, because now for the first time, he understood. He hadn't arrested some old black man with a purse. He'd arrested a war veteran. He'd insulted his son, and his son had just arrived. The station's front doors swung open. Commander James Williams stepped inside. He was tall, broad-shouldered, posture straight as a steel rod. His uniform was simple but immaculate. Olive skin, short-cut hair, dark, tired eyes that had seen things far worse than this station could imagine. 4 of his men followed him. They stood behind him in a calm V, not aggressive, but deeply, visibly dangerous if they needed to be. Every officer at the front desk instinctively stood up straighter. Where is my father? James's voice carried down the hallway, not shouted, but loud enough to command the whole building. Commander Williams, Captain Morrison hurried forward, shaking. There's been a misunderstanding. Captain Morrison, James said, not looking away. I want to see my father. Now. Then I want a full explanation, and I want it recorded. Morrison swallowed. This way, he said quietly. They walked down the hallway. Turner and Davidson backed away toward the interrogation room door. The handle turned. James stepped inside first. Dad, he said immediately, his voice softening in an instant. Are you all right? Robert sat up a little straighter in his chair. His wrists were still cuffed behind his back. I'm fine, son, he said with a small smile. These officers were just doing what they thought was their duty. James's jaw tightened when he saw the red marks dug into his father's skin by the metal. When he saw the way the cuffs were too tight.